diving into our second unit of study. And as we dive into this unit, it's very important that you formulated your thoughts on the foundational aspects of a church staff. We talked about the layperson, the volunteer, all the way to the paid professional minister that may be part-time, bivocational, or full-time. As we get into this second unit, we're going to get into some logistical, administrative details. First of all, I told you it would be good if you took some time and really thought through the different positions. As you have thought through those different positions, now we're talking about developing a staff plan. A staff plan. How many people serving in and out, week, month, year, does it take to accomplish everything in the church you're serving? I know I was serving in a church, and it was a medium-sized church. And when I charted this, we had over 600 unique positions that need to be voted on by the church each week. If you took our Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night children's ministry, preschool ministry, youth ministry, senior adult ministry, all the different committees of the church, the deacons, if you looked at everything on paper, it was hundreds of people needed week in and week out to do what we were doing. Upward coaches, referees, all the unique things about ministry, not counting special events where you do a D-Now weekend or a camp or a vacation Bible school. And so when you start charting what a staff plan really looks like, how many people from your full-time paid all the way down to your volunteer that rocks babies, what does that look like? If they're a sound person that's willing to take the heat for a mic not being unmuted. It's the worst role of a volunteer in the church, I believe, having done media over the years. Everybody looks at you when something goes wrong, even though you told the pastor 3 times how to turn his mic on. And so it's one of those things to when you start looking at the church staff, you start looking at your volunteers, there are many unique positions that you have to develop this staff plan around. What does that look like for you? And I'm not just talking about throwing out a number, well, we need 20 preschool. Okay, is that babies, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s? Children, is it first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade? Is some of those together? Is youth just 7th through 12th grade? You start looking at everything from a unique perspective, and then you start thinking of what kind of directors, ministers, leaders is shepherding, is overseeing these groups of ministry and these areas of ministry. So that's where the personnel committee comes in and the nominating committee comes in, because who is bringing these people and inspecting these people and saying, we endorse them to serve in children's ministry. We endorse them to serve in youth ministry. Or we endorse them to lead our music worship ministry. We endorse them to be our senior pastor. We endorse them to be our children's minister. So who has the authority in your church to inspect, if you will, to interview, to be sure that those people are who they need to be serving in ministry? Well, we do that well with our paid ministerial staff for the most part. But are we doing that well with the person who rightly divides the Word of God each and every week with Sunday school literature or small group material? Or are we doing that with the person who spends week in and week out teaching a child about the things of God in second grade? Are we taking responsibility as we develop the staff plan to then think about how are we in? So this is where I would encourage you to start thinking about personnel policy. I know policy is one of those words, not everybody likes dealing with the details, but is there an application to even be a volunteer at your church or to serve in ministry at your church? Is there a background check that takes place? Is there any training like ministry safe training? I teach risk management here at the seminary. I love that subject. I have a book coming out this fall about that subject, and I really feel compelled that we need to protect the people around us in ministry. And so it's important, I believe, for each of you to start thinking about personnel policy, volunteer and paid. It's also important as you think about that personnel policy to think about your insurance company, and do your volunteers have coverage for when they're serving in your ministry? Do your paid staff have coverage for when they're serving in your ministry for liability, for risk, for different things? It's important to start thinking about those things as we talk about leading a team for ministry. Then I think it's important as we establish policy of who can serve. Do you have to be a church member? Do you have to be seminary trained to be a minister on our church staff. The different qualifications as you walk through. Then it's important to start developing descriptions for each position. So there might be a small group leader description. There might be a children's volunteer description. There might be a media and music worship ministry description. There might be one for being on the praise team. If you're going to be a leader in worship, if you're going to have stage time in the congregation, what does that look like? How are you going to then enforce, going back to your policy, how are you going to enforce church discipline if you create these descriptions if people are not in compliance with those? Maybe it's a minister. Maybe it is a deacon. Maybe it is a volunteer for an age-graded ministry. But what does it look like when you and I or one of our volunteers does not line up with the descriptions we've created? Then we go back to what policy has been created then to help us lead them to reconciliation and accountability to live up to that description. It may be that we find we have to do some training with people. It may be we have to do some more coaching with people. We have to do some things that are interactive and just walk with them. It's also important for you and I, if it is dealing with the paid position, to also consider the salary components of a position and the benefits and raises and increases for tenure and different aspects of the whole staffing and pay. And so I would just encourage you, whether it's an intern, whether it's a part-time administrative assistant, maybe it's a part-time media personnel, maybe it's full-time minister, full-time director, support staff. I would just walk through what does all this look like and put formal documentation down. This is where designing a church staff, both paid and volunteer, gets very complicated. That's why we're going to spend 5 weeks unpacking all these components as we start developing our plan, looking at what committees, what leadership organizations in the church have oversight to these, what policies do we then need in order to take care of it all, what descriptions for the different positions do we need to have on file that are communicated to people, that are also allow us to be in compliance with our policy, and be sure that the people are who they say they are that are serving in ministry, especially background checks with our age-graded ministry. And then also, how are we going to pay for the whole plan? Training costs money. Resources cost money. So even volunteers, there are some things that you need to pay for in order for it all to function well. So stay with us. It's going to be several weeks of administrative detail dealing with your volunteers and dealing with your paid staff members, but I believe this unit is very important for us to design the staff plan how we need to be sure the ministry is accomplished each and every week and to be sure we're leading that ministry in an effective way with accountability. Take care. Be sure you're looking at your reading assignments. Be sure you're tracking with the assignments that are coming due. Also, at this point in the semester, it's good for you to reflect on how much are you engaging in the discussion and those threads. You need to be interacting with those with us. So go in, and if you're behind a little bit, catch up, but work through this unit with us. It's going to be great. You're going to be seeing weekly announcements from me that are helping you work through it. So I hope that this information is beneficial to you. If you need any help working through a specific issue or a specific concern in your church, you can always email me, jdean@nobts.edu.